Hello and welcome to episode 214 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick here, as always, with
Jason Rabinowitz. Hello, Ian. How's your week going?
Hello, Jason. My week's going okay. I was in Stockholm last week and then came home, and one of the kids promptly got sick the day after I came home. So I spent the weekend recovering from my trip and nursing a sick kid back to health. All while my wife said, "You were gone all week. This is your problem now," which, to be fair, it was.
I think she's right. Mm-hmm.
She
you weren't
is
exactly
right.
away on vacation, but she's still right.
As any of the parents listening know, single parenting is doesn't matter where the other person is. It's no fun. But everyone's back to full strength. The sun has come out in Chicago for the first time in months, I think. It's warming up slightly. And so we're off to a good week. And we've got a great show for you this week, a wide variety of stories. And I think we have to start with what was breaking news about an hour ago.
The story we just needed, right?
It was the feel-good story of the week that I needed. And I want to thank Anyali Enyeti, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, for the beautiful photographs, wonderful reportage, and great storytelling as a mass of bees sat on the wingtip fence of her Delta A320.
Yeah, something we've seen before. This happens in cities. I think the NYPD here in New York actually has a bee keeping specific unit, which is all sorts of problematic and weird, but occasionally there are thousands of bees on a building or a traffic light or a stop sign, and they go collect the bees. But I'm not sure we've seen an incident, at least that I can recall, of just thousands of bees deciding, you know what? That wingtip fence on that 320 over there looks real nice. Let's go make it our home.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen one with the wingtip fence. We've seen where like they'll go into the engines, that are obviously not on, or especially when aircraft go into storage, they'll go into like the pitot tubes or the wheel wells or wherever.
Generally bad things. You don't want any
generally
of that.
bad things. And there is a plan for those things, but there didn't seem to be a plan for this particular event. And we'll put a link to the Twitter thread in the show notes because it does take you on a journey. But it basically ends with them going, well, we need to move the plane. We're probably going to have to cancel the flight. And then as soon as they started up the APU to move the aircraft, the beast went away.
Yes, and for anyone who has seen the thread to the conclusion of today's events will know that they moved the plane off the gate because they needed the gate for another flight. The bees went away. They are apparently, as we speak right now, pulling the A320 back up to another gate, and they're boarding their flight to Atlanta. So all's well that ends well. I hope the bees found somewhere else, maybe a Spirit A320 that is a little more color appropriate for them to go hang out on. But what a nice story.
What a nice story.
Yeah,
one that
we need more of those.
I think needed today. Maybe not bees, but feel good stories that have happy endings.
Just read through the thread of the various things the ground crew in Houston tried to do to get rid of the bees that just did not work.
That's really the best part. They're like, well, we're out of ideas. Just move the plane. And then the bees were like, all right, we're done. In much less happy news, we've got more problems with more engines than even we talked about last week. And it has led to Go First, the Indian low-cost carrier, declaring bankruptcy. In their bankruptcy protection filings, they solidly lay the blame at the feet of Pratt and Whitney, and specifically the geared turbofan engine that powers their A320neo fleet. They have now sued Pratt and Whitney for close to $1 billion. So not great news all around. Go First has suspended flights from May 3rd today through May 5th on Friday, saying that they are hopeful that they can restart flights. But as anyone who's listened to this podcast for any length of time knows that once an airline stops flying, it becomes incredibly difficult to restart operations.
Yeah, I hope this case is different because it's not like there were external market forces making business impossible for Go First or just trying to operate an airline where it was not financially reasonable. This was purely external forces that just you can't predict, you can't really blame them for. So hopefully this is one of those rare instances where Go First is able to get its house in order, get something out of Pratt and Whitney and start flying again, because we all know India sure has pretty much a bottomless pit of demand for domestic travel. So it's not like other airlines won't be trying to fill this void quickly, or that the industry market can't handle Go First coming back into it. So it's different than our normal circumstance, which we'll talk about another one of those airlines shortly.
Right. A more normal one.
Yeah, I hope Go First is able to get what it almost certainly deserves out of Pratt and Whitney and is able to restart services, and its employees are made whole shortly.
I mean, Go has a total of 55 aircraft, of which 27, 28, depending on the cutoff that you want to give for usage versus active or grounded. So between 27, 28 aircraft grounded or just not in operation since the last few weeks of April. And some of these aircraft have been on the ground for a long time. One of their A320neos has been grounded since 2021. Or I'm sorry, two of them have been grounded since 2021. A bunch in the early part of 2022. And then things really started accelerating where you start seeing 3 aircraft in June, August, September, and November of 2022. 3 aircraft per month being grounded.
Yeah. And again, Go First is not the only airline experiencing this. We talked about others, and we have here, I don't know, it's a third of the Swiss A220 fleet is grounded, plus 3 Lufthansa A320neos. I'm booked on a couple of Air France A220s, and oh, wow, next month. So hoping those go as planned. But you posed an interesting question today about the situation. What exactly was your wording for this situation?
My specific wording was I would love to read 2,500 words on what is going on at Pratt and Whitney. Why is Pratt and Whitney specifically so affected by these particular issues? And we said last week, I think specifically, because the LEAP engines, specifically the LEAP 1A engines that power the other slightly less than half of the A320neo family fleet that are made by CFM, they are not immune to issues. CFM engines have experienced issues. Those issues have been the same issues that the geared turbofan engine has experienced in harsh climates. So in places that are extremely sandy, or places that have very poor air quality. So places like India, places like the Middle East, where you're operating into, airports that are basically paved deserts. Those engines have also experienced issues. But the Pratt and Whitney engine issues have been so much more pervasive. And it seems like they've struggled to manage much more of the design, manufacturing, supply chain, refurbishment, maintenance process, that whole life cycle of the engines. They've managed that with much more difficulty than the LEAP engine. So I said I wanted 2,500 words on it.
Yeah, you got less than 2,500 words.
I got less than 2,500 words, but our answer came through out of Sean Broderick at Aviation Week.
Sean Broderick at Aviation Week published substantially fewer than 2,500 words, thankfully, so I can actually get to the end of the article. But yeah, it does not spare Pratt and Whitney much here. The article goes on to say that among the exclusively Pratt-powered A220 fleet, nearly 20% of the 262 in-service aircraft were listed as not flying regularly, including 26 in storage. There are some really good quotes here. I'll summarize. In quote here, "We're operating in some very harsh environments," said Raytheon chairman and CEO Greg Hayes. "We probably didn't spend enough time testing for those harsh environments, specifically places like India. And that's where we've seen the lower life on the combustor and turbine blades just because of the harsh conditions there." Wow. Hard to get that sentence out. Pretty much what we've known, that places like India, the Middle East, are having difficulty keeping these engines in service just because of the quote-unquote harsh conditions there were not unknown before these engines came to be. It's not like the geared turbofan engines came into existence and suddenly the air quality in India plummeted Pretty sure that was a pre-existing condition. But the article goes on to say that Pratt hopes to have its new production method, I guess, for the geared turbofan engines fully transitioned to the Advantage variant by 2026. So that's a long time. But in the meantime, it'll continue to add maintenance, repair, overhaul capacity, and develop repairs to help keep the current fleet operating. So this story is not ending anytime soon, it seems.
And one of the things that they are doing, because they've had such issues with supply chain and parts, and then getting those parts installed on engines by qualified mechanics, that's a big piece of the puzzle as well. I mean, so it's, and we talked about this over the past couple episodes, and we talked about it last week, but I think it really comes to a head when you have an airline declaring bankruptcy. And it's not to say that Go First's only problem are the engines, but having a chunk of your fleet unavailable, half your fleet unavailable, that makes it extremely difficult to operate a schedule. And if you're concerned that the aircraft that you are operating are going to go down the same way the other half of the fleet has, if you continue to use them, I mean, that's not sustainable either.
No, as if operating an airline in the current market conditions is not already difficult enough with constant labor shortages, air traffic control, snafus, airport strikes, all of this, as if having the aircraft engines literally not working is not something these airlines needed on top of everything else, making air travel seemingly impossible for some people in some parts of the country at this point. But it looks like this will be an issue that persists for quite a while, unfortunately. It's not like an airline can go out and buy a new 320 or 737 that doesn't have a geared turbofan engine at this point. That is what is on offer. I guess you could go out and buy some new Embraer E175s that don't have GTFs, but that's about it these days.
Yeah. Or you're facing the back of a very long line.
Yeah, I think Airbus in its Q1 results that you're typing in the show notes right now, they said they're sold out of the A320 family, or was it the A320 specifically, or the family through 2029? That's a long time.
It's a long time. And they're going to increase rates, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, but they're going to increase rates, and hopefully, but they still need, those aircraft still need engines.
Yes, they do. And maybe they come from a competitor, because you can get engines from someone else.
That's true. That's very true. Speaking of getting different engines, you know who's sitting a little happy right now? Which airline?
Alaska, because I'm flying them tomorrow?
I mean, them too. But
Yeah,
I was
them.
thinking of another first quarter results, and that would be Finnair.
Finnair, all right. What did they have to say?
So first things first, they're deferring one of their two remaining A350 aircraft. They've got 17 in the fleet now, and they're going to say, well, we're going to move the next one back a year. On the narrow body side, Finnair is an airline that has not renewed their fleet, and they are extremely excited about that at the moment. They're still operating A320 COs and A321 COs. And they have not had to deal with any of this. And they are very happy with themselves about that at the moment.
Not too often you hear an airline say, our
Right?
A320 family aircraft are on average 20.8 years old, and damn it, that's the way we want it to be right now, because that is unusual. It's 5 A319s are 22 years on average. It's A320s, 20.8. Its A321s are actually relatively new, but they're all of the CO variant. So the only newer generation aircraft Finnair operates is the A350, which thankfully does not seem to be plagued by any engine-related issues. But yeah, here's a rare incident where you're an airline that's happy to have aircraft that range up to 22 and a half years old.
Yeah. So good for Finnair. I think we can say more about and they mentioned that they go, we're going to have to, fix that problem in a few years. But for right now, they're fine with it. Yeah, let's talk about Airbus's first quarter results. We talked about Boeing's first quarter results last week, and we're going to talk about Airbus this week. Their earnings fell, but not as much as was forecast. The information as far as what we care about is really what the order book looks like. And as far as what I specifically care about is the fact that the entry into service for the A350 dedicated freighter is now back a year. So we're looking at 2026.
Oh, that's disappointing. That's going to be a nice looking aircraft. But Airbus is now targeting 720 commercial aircraft deliveries in calendar year 2023. So we'll check back in December to see if that happened. I guess January of next year to see if that happened.
Right. Yeah. I mean, nothing has really changed. Q2 of 2024 for the A321 XLR EIS. And then the rate increases remain pretty much the same for the A220, A320 family. So A320 family is going to go to 65 by the end of next year, and then 75 per month in late 2025, early 2026. So that's still bonkers to me that they're going to make that many A320 family aircraft per month, but that's what they say they're going to do. A330 is sticking at rate 4 per month for next year. The A350 will go up to 9 by the end of 2025, so a little wiggle room there. And like we said, the A350 freighter won't be flying with an airline until 2026. Oh, well. I guess the more normal airline bankruptcy that we were referring to, although there's not really a whole lot of normal about this particular airline, but it does follow a more tried and true pattern as far as the cause, and that's just not having any money. Air Moldova has suspended flights. They recently suspended flights at the end of April and then restarted flights. They were one of the rare restarts, but it didn't last very long. And they have now suspended flights pending a Moldovan court ruling on their proposed restructuring. They owe about $110 million in debt. And a lot of that comes from the airline was previously government owned. In 2018, it was privatized. The current ownership of the airline says all of these problems came from the state ownership. After it was privatized, we've been doing a good job. The president of Moldova says nothing changed. You didn't improve anything, and no, we're not giving you any money. And so here they are in a forced restructuring, awaiting the ruling from the court to see whether they can restart operations or not. But it doesn't seem likely at this point, though Moldova is such an interesting case. I wouldn't be surprised if they somehow got back to flying either with wet leases or something, because they have 3 owned aircraft. One has been stuck on the ground in Verona because of a maintenance issue for a very long time, I think a couple months now. And the other 2 are leased, and the lessor said you have to take them out of Moldova because Moldova is too close to Ukraine, and we're worried that our aircraft are going to be involved in a war, and we don't want that.
Yeah, it's reasonable. I don't foresee this airline coming back anytime soon. I'm sure the void, like we discussed with India, will be filled by Wizz Air and Ryanair and whatever other ultra low cost carriers can fill that void, and I'm sure they will rather quickly.
It's not a ton of traffic, but it's always disconcerting to see another airline go.
Yeah.
You don't want to see it no matter what. So let's change the subject and talk about some good news. Fly Dubai unveiled its, I believe, 3rd new cabin in how many years for its narrow body fleet?
Specific to the 737 MAX, because it also has NGs. It first took its first MAX, I think, in 2017 with a fairly nice interior. I think it was, that Swiss or original JetBlue Mint interior where it's like alternating 1-2-1 business class seats. Then later on the MAX 9, it decided, okay, we want an aircraft type for a seat for shorter range flights. So it had a really nice, like, reclining type seat. And then it said, you know what? That's not enough. We need more differentiation. And they have announced what is one of the nicest looking narrow body interiors, these full flat, all aisle access, suite door equipped seats. I think it's 10 of them on board the 737 MAX, which is just really going to make people jealous entering at that L1 door who have to go through that cabin to their admittedly nice economy seats. But Fly Dubai is an interesting case of an, I guess, realistically an LCC turned into a hybrid premium carrier offering that is now, I guess, is it outright owned or majority owned by Emirates? I think I'm not totally clear on that, but
yeah, it's part of the group.
yeah, it's part of the Emirates group. But now Fly Dubai, like the LCC cousin of Emirates, now has a nicer business class and is on nearly all Emirates aircraft, which is just a bizarre turn of events. If given the chance, I would definitely fly one of these Fly Dubai 737s over an Emirates 777, which is just a weird thing to say.
Yeah, I was thinking about how much of this, because there is some competition. Granted, Fly Dubai's main purpose here is to funnel traffic to or from Emirates long haul. But there's a lot of overlap still in the route network. And like you said, I mean, it's a nicer seat than the Emirates business class.
Yeah, and I do want to commend the Fly Dubai, I guess, media team for putting out some excellent media materials with really in-depth information, something we don't see from enough airlines announcing a product like this. And I really hope I get a chance to fly Dubai in the near future. I feel like it's also a preview of things that some airlines are really going to do on these newer generation narrow bodies like the MAX 10 and the 321 XLR. There's finally the chance to put something nice on these 7.3s and 320s. And Fly Dubai is coming on strong with this cabin. Kind of reminds me, I guess, sort of what SAS has done on its 321 LR, equipping a narrow body aircraft for true long haul flights.
It's a similar idea, though I think Fly Dubai's done an even nicer job.
It has. At least we think it has. It doesn't exist yet.
That's
but
true.
When it does,
That's true.
When it does, I would very much like to see it.
We should try and go.
Sure. We definitely go lots of places.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Let's go somewhere now. We're going to go to Australia. Qantas has named its current CFO, Vanessa Hudson, as the new CEO. She will replace Alan Joyce in November when Joyce retires from the airline. Joyce has been a lightning rod of criticism. I'm not Australian myself, but any Australian person who I've ever talked to about Qantas generally loves the idea of Qantas and hates Alan Joyce. So one of the things that the incoming CEO Hudson has said is going to be in her brief is restoring trust in the airline, both in terms of its customers domestically, especially, but also the trade unions that make up the airline's employees. They have had very fractious and tension-filled relations with Joyce. So he will be leaving in November. She assumes the role. And that ends or begins what I think is the first time of both Australian long-haul carriers being helmed by women. Jane Hrdlicka runs Virgin Australia, and Vanessa Hudson will be running Qantas. So it'll be interesting to see them really get into their roles and see how Qantas changes with the departure of Joyce, who's a very strong character and it has driven a lot of the changes at Qantas. So it'll be interesting to see how much continuity is there and how much change.
Yeah, I definitely don't know much of the background or history on why Australians might not like Joyce so much, but he's definitely shepherded in an interesting era in Qantas's history with the whole Project Sunrise, I guess, competition between Boeing and Airbus, but of course still hasn't actually launched, may never launch, maybe it does one day, I don't know, but at least it's been an interesting couple of years for Qantas leading up to this CEO change. So exciting new chapter for them.
And Joyce's job has by no means been easy. I mean, thinking about the unique challenges that face an Australian airline as far as the route network and having to develop that, having to bring in, the new aircraft into the fleet, retiring the 747, I think was a huge thing for Qantas, and then dealing with domestic upstart competition that has in many ways changed how the airline has had to operate. So by no means easy, but I don't think anyone I've talked to, and if you are listening and go, no, I love Alan Joyce, email us and tell us why, podcast@fr24.com. I would love to hear someone not defend, but just some words of encouragement and support as he gets ready to leave the airline. So this was a cool one. And I don't say that lightly because Jason and I, mostly Jason, has a policy of not talking about things that have not yet happened. But the PR photos in this particular release, it wasn't even the plane that drew me in. It was the truck.
Go on.
ZeroAvia and Alaska Airlines had an event earlier this week announcing that they were developing the world's, quote unquote, the world's largest zero emission aircraft. Alaska Airlines not needing the Dash 8 Q400 anymore, presented that particular aircraft to ZeroAvia, and that will be retrofitted with ZeroAvia's hydroelectric propulsion system, which would create the world's largest zero emissions aircraft. That's all well and good, but in the release, ZeroAvia also posted a picture of its HyperTruck.
Ooh, that's a nice name.
I know.
Certainly better than Cybertruck.
Exactly. So the HyperTruck is an Oshkosh truck that's been modified to have the ZeroAvia propulsion system that's been attached to a Dash 8 Q400 gearbox and propeller. So it's basically a big truck with a propeller mounted on the front and on top of it. And it looks bizarre.
But
and
man, will that thing get from 0 to 60 real quick.
So it's a 1.8 megawatt electric propulsion system configured with the stock Dash 8 engine, gearbox, and propeller. Consists of two, quote, hypercore motor modules. And each of those, just all of this technology is fascinating to me. Each a, quote, high power, high speed, 900 kilowatt permanent magnet radial flux machine.
You made that up.
I did not. I read it and I will link to it.
That string of words cannot possibly exist in order and mean something real, can it?
It apparently means something real. I didn't even get to the best part. It spins at 20,000 RPM.
That's terrifying. I hope I don't see that on the BQE anytime soon. But yeah, it's nice to see Alaska just kind of gifting ZeroAvia a full, Dash 8 Q400, as Seth Miller pointed out to me, friend of the show, that it is, as he said, the least Alaska could do, because not that far back in 2021, Alaska had announced that it had secured at the time options for up to 50 kits to begin converting its regional aircraft to hydrogen electric power through ZeroAvia's zero-emission powertrain, starting with the Q400. Alaska doesn't operate the Q400 anymore, so it won't be needing those up to 50 hydrogen conversion kits. So that's, yeah, it really is the least they could do, because they're not flying those aircraft anymore. No one else is going to want them, and they won't be buying the company's product. But I'm excited to see what they end up doing here, because they have already flown I think it was the 10 to 20 seater, the much smaller aircraft, but a full-on Q400 operating on hydrogen power using whatever it is they've bolted onto that HyperTruck is going to be super exciting. It feels like the first legitimately sized, legitimately possible next generation fuel aircraft that we've seen to date. But unfortunately, it won't be coming to Alaska Air anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, they've got the Dash 8 300. Yeah, it's a 300 that Universal Hydrogen's been operating. So that's the largest kind of hydrogen-powered aircraft. So this would take it one step further and would just be really cool to see.
A Q300 is nice, but a Q400, and I feel like you're dabbling in real airline
big leagues,
aircraft.
kid.
Yeah, that's how you know you've made it. Unfortunately, the Q400 is not exactly a hot-selling aircraft. Do they even make those anymore? No, right?
I mean,
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't know. But disappointing end to that aircraft, but nice to see that livery is just really, really nice. We glazed right over that, but it is a beautiful looking aircraft.
I wanted to get to the truck.
The truck is nice, but the truck doesn't fly. If it flies, something has gone terribly wrong.
It's got a flux capacitor.
I see that you made up. That I know. I know what that is. And it cannot time travel.
Says you.
I mean, not yet.
So do you know who can time travel? We can time travel. because as time marches forward, I feel like we're actually going back in time.
Oh, I think what you mean is time is a flat circle. Because if you were leading into North, wants to fly to Asia, specifically to Bangkok, and is definitely not Norwegian, yes, time is going in a circle, it feels like. But there's some other interesting things that Norwegian definitely did not do.
Yeah, so Norse, which is definitely not Norwegian, is opening up come October for the winter season and Oslo-Bangkok route. So good for them. SAS is also going to open up a flight to Bangkok. So lots of Scandinavian Bangkok flights coming up in the winter season.
As a reminder, that is a thing because that is basically the farthest part of Asia that they can fly to without having to go through Russian airspace, which used to be a problem back in the Norwegian days because Norwegian just couldn't get the overflight rights to go over Russia. But now it's a different reason why you can't go over Russia. So Bangkok is about as far as they can go into Asia. They can't get to Tokyo or Beijing or anything like that. So Bangkok it is.
There you go. And it's also a popular destination for a lot of Scandinavian and Nordic travelers. So this all works out.
Yeah.
Norse will also fly from London to Barbados and Kingston and Montego in Jamaica. So that's kind of the fresh twist.
That's a new one. This is not something Norwegian did, or at least it did serve the Caribbean, but out of New York, actually on 737s. But I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know if there's much demand for London to Barbados and Jamaica. Those are our winter getaway destinations for like the U.S. East Coast, but is there really demand from London all the way to the Caribbean? They have their own Caribbean outside of Europe that doesn't require an overnight flight to get to. I don't know about this, but I guess they got to throw some darts at the map and see what happens.
Well, I mean, if you look at BA service or kind of a little bit more widely KLM service, you have a lot of those tag flights where you you kind of cobble together a route out of multiple islands. So maybe, these particular destinations have enough demand for nonstop flights and that's it. I don't know. But I like that they're trying new things and they're going for sun rather than, what really ended up being Norwegian's problem is they had too many aircraft flying too far to destinations where they couldn't possibly fit enough people or find enough load to make it work.
Okay, good luck.
Good luck. Sticking with good luck, this is one of those things that sure, why not? Hainan Group Airlines Urumqi and Suparna, which I almost said Yangtze River Express because that's what the airline used to be called. Now it's called Suparna. They are each going to take 30 C919s, and Hainan also ordered 40 ARJ21s because reasons.
Hey, it never hurts to have 40 ARJ21s, parked somewhere in case you need them later for an unspecified airline. Doesn't hurt.
So we'll see what they do with those. I mean, the C919 rollout has been not great, I think is a charitable way to describe it. So good to see that the orders keep coming in.
Wait, why has it not been great? It just happened very recently, right?
I'm saying the entry into service has been quite slow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think it entered service unofficially with China Eastern, and then that was the last we heard of it.
And then that was it.
That was it.
Yeah. I mean, there has not been much after that.
Yeah, I would... Oh, wait a minute. Are we discussing the C919 or ARJ21? Because if we're talking about the ARJ21, yeah, bad. But if we're talking about the C919...
we're talking about the 919.
Oh, okay.
We're talking about both, really.
Oh, okay.
But it's two separate conversations.
The ARJ21, yeah, hot garbage. Nobody wants that. The C919, yeah, we need to give that a lot more time before we...
Oh, yeah. I'm saying the 919 rollout has been slow. The ARJ21 is a waste of space. They should just take the learnings, which was the whole idea anyway, and move on.
Yes. Okay. Same page. I think the C919 actually recently was introduced outside? No, it's the ARJ21. I keep getting these two confused.
That was in Indonesia.
Yeah, Indonesia. Hot garbage. Nobody wants it. Move on. The C919 is what we're all interested in. I would very much like to see that enter service in some more legitimate way, because I think that popped into China Eastern schedule for like a day and then disappeared and hasn't been seen from again. So all eyes on the 919. The ARJ21 can get lost. We don't care about that.
All right, let's talk about another airline and another set of aircraft. Azerbaijan Airlines has firmed up their order for 8 more 787s, the worst kind of 787s, the Dash 8.
But you know what? It's the best kind of livery on a 787 because damn, as Azal, its livery is just fantastic. Not as good as it looks stretched out on an A340-500. I think that was one of the best looking aircraft possibly of all time, in my opinion. But yeah, it is a very good livery. But yeah, not great that it's the Dash 8 component, but that's fine. You don't want to order too much airplane because this isn't exactly an Emirates we're talking about here.
That's true. I mean, you want the right size airplane. I'm not down on their ordering it.
You are not a fan of the Dash 8. You have made that opinion well known on this podcast.
No. Have I ever talked about that before?
Maybe you've only talked about it to me, but why don't we get into it? Why do you hate the original 787?
No. We're not doing this again. No, we're not doing this again. We are not doing this again. See previous episodes for my long-winded and probably unnecessary rants against the 787-8. Tarmac Aerosave is opening up another location. This time they're going into China in Chengdu. So good for them as they continue to expand around the world, as they take care of all of those aircraft reaching the end of life.
Yeah, this one is actually a joint venture with Airbus Lifecycle Services, and the facility will offer storage, maintenance, dismantling, and recycling services in China. The facility will cover a surface area of 717,000 square meters and have a storage capacity for 125 aircraft. 75% of the aircraft, they estimate, will be stored in the center, will be transitioned into second life cycles, meaning, I guess, to another airline. The remaining will be dismantled with the unique Tarmac Aerosave process, reusing and recycling about 90% of the aircraft weight. Wow. That's impressive. You could tell I'm reading right from the press materials there. But I picked this out because it's interesting that there are a lot of old aircraft in China, a lot of aircraft that are getting up there in age, that are getting ready to be retired. And I picked this out because I think it's interesting that Airbus is anticipating the need to do something with them in mainland China and not have to fly them out to France or to Goodyear, Arizona, or anything like that. So they can deal with this all, not in-house, but in-country, without having to fly them halfway around the world to be dismantled. This just makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me, especially as, to me, it's also a good way to market the replacement. You know, we can take care of, you know, how it's like, we'll take care of your trade-in, no problem.
It's like buying a new iPhone.
Exactly. We'll take care of the trade-in.
Yeah.
Aircraft that are being traded in that no one wants in any way, shape, or form to have a second life. Endeavor has retired the CRJ 200.
See you in hell, little regional jet. I have spent so many hours of my life on specifically Endeavor Air CRJ 200. So this is happy news for me. Unfortunately, the CRJ 200 is not quite out of the fleet at Delta. SkyWest still operates a lot of them, but those are based out in the Detroit, Minneapolis, and Salt Lake City hubs where I don't have to worry about them anymore. But the days of the CRJ 200s, they feel like they're numbered. Nobody wants them at this point. They obviously don't make them anymore. There is a need for them in some markets. The routes that Delta still operates them on are really SkyWest. I don't even know half of these airport codes. Do you know where TWF is? Because I don't.
Woof. Isn't that Western Utah?
Sure. What about EKO?
EKO, is that Elkhorn?
I don't know. It's in Nevada somewhere. How about CPR? The point I'm making here is that it's really going to these tiny, tiny airports. Most of them are probably essential air service routes.
CPR is Casper. I actually know that one.
Oh, okay. There you go. How about one more? RHL.
RHL.
It's in Minnesota, I think.
Rochester, Minnesota?
Is it?
I mean, pick another city and no, I have no idea.
I don't know. Doesn't matter. I'm not flying them anytime soon, but
okay.
Yeah, good to see that they're out of Endeavor Air's fleet, who now exclusively flies the 7 and 900, I believe. So happy to not end up on any of those anytime soon.
Fair enough. Yeah, now I'm going to be wondering.
You can look them up. You can link to my tweet with the map of the locations for all of them, but I don't know most of these airports because...
Okay, fine.
Yep.
All right, let's close the show with news I never thought we would be able to report.
It finally happened.
It finally happened. Late last week, the former Mexican presidential 787 left Mexico City, where it had been brought back to from Victorville, California, and then flew up to the US, where it is going to be repainted, and then it is going to be transferred to Tajikistan, because the new owner is Tajikistan.
All right. I am very excited to see the episode of Cockpit Confidential that I hope he was able to put together on the mission to get this aircraft from Mexico all the way out to its new owners. There's got to be a very interesting story behind it, and I know there is, and we will bring it to you as soon as we get Steve Giordano on the podcast, because he's a busy man these days.
He's a very busy man these days, and the plane's not in Tajikistan yet. So we are holding a place in a future episode. Whenever this is all said and done, Steve has promised to come on the show and tell us the story. Because as we already know, it's required a ton of work to not just get the aircraft out of storage and out of Mexico, but also into Tajikistan. And that hasn't even happened yet.
It's only made it as far as San Bernardino, California,
yes.
Which I'm pretty sure is the opposite direction of Tajikistan.
It's not Tajikistan.
It is the wrong way. It is in California. They've got a long way to go, but do you think they could do it in one hop? Can they get from San Bernardino to Tajikistan in one hop in an empty 787? But it's a terrible teen, so probably not.
Is it a terrible teen?
It is. I believe this is like one of the original 787s. Like,
I thought it was preteen.
Is it preteen?
I think it's preteen.
If only I can search real quick. I can click. It was delivered. Well, no, it is 12.6 years old. Line number 6. You're right. It's not even a teen. It's a terrible preteen. You have kids. What do you call a terrible preteen?
Thankfully, I don't have to worry about preteens yet, but I'm going to cross that bridge when I get there. Now, so I wonder if they'll be able to get it all the way to Tajikistan on one hop.
Well, if only we knew the guy that was going to be flying it.
I know. Maybe we'll just have to, call him up and ask and bring you the answer on the next episode. So Let's do that and call this episode done. This has been episode 214 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick, here as always with
Jason Rabinowitz. Thanks for listening.